Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a really fascinating topic to dig into today. You guys have been sending in some really thought-provoking stuff lately, especially when it comes to women's health.
Mhm.
And one area that keeps popping up, kind of weaving its way into the conversation, is vaginal health.
Yeah, definitely a topic a lot of women are thinking about.
So today we're going to take a deep dive, a real deep dive, into a specific condition that, that impacts a lot of women. Atrophic vaginitis.
Sometimes you hear it called vaginal atrophy.
Yeah, exactly. So, to break it down simply, atrophic vaginitis is basically when the walls of the vagina, they start to thin out, they
Right.
become drier, and they can get inflamed.
Mm.
And, the primary culprit behind all of this is a decline in estrogen levels.
That's the key. Yeah.
And of course, we often associate this with menopause, right?
Oh, right.
But it can actually happen after childbirth, too.
Yeah, during breastfeeding.
Yeah, breastfeeding, exactly. And sometimes even as a result of certain cancer treatments. So it's important to understand that we're not just talking about a little isolated issue here.
No.
Atrophic vaginitis can really impact a woman's overall vaginal health in significant ways.
Yeah, think about it. A healthy vagina, it has this sort of this delicate ecosystem, right? It's
Yeah.
got that balanced community of microorganisms. We call it the microbiome.
Yeah.
It has good natural lubrication, and it has, strong defenses against infection.
Mhm.
So when estrogen levels decline, it can throw all of that out of whack.
Right, like disrupt the whole system.
Exactly.
Right.
And this can lead to, a less diverse vaginal microbiome, not as many of the good bacteria,
Uh-huh.
reduced lubrication, obviously,
Yeah.
and even a weakened immune response down there.
Mhm.
And that's why it can increase the risk of, things like diarrheal vaginosis,
Yeah, bees.
yeast infections, of course,
Oh, those are never fun.
and even, those really annoying urinary tract infections or UTIs.
Yeah. Right, right. And I know from, what a lot of you have shared with us that the symptoms can be they can be really persistent and uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're talking about that feeling of dryness,
Mm,
itching,
yeah.
pain during intercourse, which can be, really distressing.
Yeah, and also just like a frequent urge to go to the bathroom, like that urgency feeling all the time, really disruptive.
Yeah, exactly. So our mission today in this deep dive is to really get a good grasp on how atrophic vaginitis is tied to your overall vaginal health, Like, why is the vaginal microbiome so crucial? And most importantly, what are some practical things you can do to support, your own vaginal wellness?
Right, exactly. We need to give people some tools they can actually use.
Yeah, for sure. So let's start with that core connection, that relationship between, atrophic vaginitis and vaginal health.
Okay, so I think a good place to begin is with, estrogen, because this hormone, it plays a fundamental role in, maintaining the health of your vaginal lining. And it's all about resilience.
Yeah.
It helps to keep the tissues nice and robust, they're flexible and well lubricated. You could almost think of estrogen as like the essential building block for a thriving, vaginal environment.
Like the foundation.
The foundation, exactly.
Okay. So, and we know that environment thrives on balance, right?
Right.
Like a really delicate balance. So can you tell us a bit more about the vaginal microbiome? Like, what is it? What makes it so important?
Yeah, so a healthy vagina has this rich and diverse community of bacteria. And it's a really balanced community, And typically, the Lactobacillus species, they're kind of like the stars of the show.
Headliners, yeah.
Yeah, the headliners, they're the most dominant.
Yeah.
And these good bacteria, they produce lactic acid, which creates an acidic environment.
Okay.
And usually, the pH down there is going to be somewhere between 3.8 and 4.5.
Oh, wow. That's pretty acidic.
It is. And that acidity, it acts like this natural shield.
Okay.
It helps to inhibit the overgrowth of, less desirable bacteria and fungi.
Okay.
All the stuff that can cause trouble.
Gotcha. So it's like the first line of defense, keeping things in check.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So then what happens when those estrogen levels start to dip,
Right.
How does that throw off this whole protective system?
Well, okay, so the first thing that happens is that the vaginal tissues themselves, they start to thin and dry out.
Mhm.
They become more fragile,
Okay.
less elastic,
Okay.
and, more susceptible to those tiny little tears and irritation, and discomfort. And this is, especially noticeable during intercourse. It's kind of like, when your skin loses its plumpness and it just becomes more easily damaged.
Right, right. Makes sense.
Yeah,
So, less natural lubrication, more delicate tissue sounds like a recipe for irritation.
it is. Yeah.
Okay, and what about those beneficial bacteria that we were talking about, the lactobacillus?
Right.
How does that drop in estrogen affect them?
So this is where it gets really interesting. Lower estrogen levels also cause a decrease in glycogen.
Glycogen.
Yeah, and glycogen is basically a type of sugar.
Okay.
And it's the main food source for those lactobacillus bacteria.
Mm.
So as their food supply diminishes, the populations of these good bacteria, they can actually start to decline.
Okay, I see.
And that shift causes the vaginal pH to become less acidic.
Okay.
It moves towards a more alkaline environment. And that's when things can start to get out of balance.
Right.
Because in this less acidic environment, all those opportunistic bacteria and fungi, they have a much easier time multiplying.
Oh, I see.
So that significantly increases the likelihood of things like BV, bacterial vaginosis,
Yeah.
and yeast infections. So it really is a fundamental shift in the ecosystem.
Wow, so it's almost like a domino effect, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Less estrogen leads to less food for the good bacteria, which makes the environment less protective and more vulnerable. And that also explains why women with atrophic vaginitis are more susceptible to other infections too, right? Like
Yeah.
UTIs, like we were saying earlier.
That's right. So you've got that thinner, more fragile lining, plus a less balanced microbiome.
Right.
And that weakens the overall barrier, against any pathogens that are trying to get in.
Yeah, yeah.
So it just becomes easier for those opportunistic bacteria to gain a foothold.
Okay, so we're getting a really clear picture here of why this is more than just, a minor inconvenience. Let's dive into the symptoms a little bit more. We touched on a few earlier, but
Yeah.
what's the full range of what someone might experience?
Yeah, so the symptoms, they really can vary
Yeah.
quite a bit, from woman to woman. Some women experience relatively mild discomfort, and that's it.
Okay.
But for others, it could be really debilitating,
Yeah.
and it impacts, their daily lives, their relationships, their well-being in general. So some of the most common symptoms include that persistent vaginal dryness that we talked about
Yeah.
and that irritation. A lot of women describe, burning or itching sensations.
Mm.
Pain during intercourse, just called dyspareunia,
Yeah.
is also really common. And it can be very distressing.
Absolutely.
Some women, because the tissues are so fragile, they might notice a little bit of spotting or light bleeding after intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
And, the amount or the type of vaginal discharge can change.
Okay.
Some women experience, more urinary symptoms,
Yeah.
like that frequent and urgent need to pee that I mentioned before, or discomfort during urination.
Right. Yeah, and it's important to remember that, as you mentioned, these symptoms aren't just going to, magically disappear on their own.
Yeah,
In fact, if you ignore them, they can actually worsen over time.
exactly.
It's like you get stuck in this cycle of discomfort and vulnerability.
And that brings us back to that whole idea of maintaining a healthy vaginal microbiome,
Yeah, exactly.
It all comes back to balance.
Okay, so let's dive a little deeper into that. Why is this microbial balance, why is it so crucial for vaginal health?
Well, as we discussed earlier, those lactobacillus bacteria, they're like the VIPs of the vagina. I
Okay.
mean, they're producing lactic acid.
Yeah.
They're maintaining that low pH.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the first line of defense.
Right.
But they actually do a lot more than that.
Oh.
They're not just passive,
Okay.
They actively contribute to your local immune response down there.
So they're like little warriors.
They are. They help your body recognize and fight off invaders
Wow.
right there in the vaginal environment. It's like a partnership.
That's so cool. So they're not just like creating a good environment, they're actively participating in keeping things healthy.
Exactly, yeah.
Mhm.
And on top of that, a healthy, thriving microbiome,
Mhm.
it actually strengthens the lining of the vagina.
Okay.
So it's less prone to irritation and damage. So for women who are dealing with atrophic vaginitis, restoring that microbial balance, it's not just about relieving the symptoms, that are happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's about promoting tissue repair, getting rid of that dryness, and preventing those recurring infections that, can really disrupt your life.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so now we've got a pretty good understanding of, the problem, the importance of the microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some practical steps that someone can take to support their vaginal health, if they're dealing with atrophic vaginitis. I know a lot of our listeners are probably eager to hear about some solutions.
Right? They want some tools to use.
Exactly.
Okay, so first things first, we got to replenish those beneficial bacteria.
Okay.
Right? That's the foundation.
Yep.
And that's where probiotics come in. Probiotics can be really valuable here.
Okay.
And there are certain strains that have shown to be really effective in restoring balance in the vaginal microbiome.
Okay.
And also, protecting against those bad bacteria. So some of the key players, keep an eye out for these names: Lactobacillus acidophilus, L. rhamnosus, L. reuteri, L. plantarum, and even Bacillus coagulans.
Okay, wow, that's a lot of L's. So when I'm looking at probiotics, these are some of the names that I should be looking for.
Yeah, these are the ones that, really have the science behind them.
Got it.
And the research shows that they're especially well suited for the vaginal environment.
Okay, that makes sense.
The second thing we got to think about is tackling that inflammation that often comes along with atrophic vaginitis.
Yeah.
So certain nutrients, they have anti-inflammatory properties,
Mm-hmm.
and they can be super helpful in soothing those irritated tissues
Okay.
and just promoting healing.
Yeah, so you want to calm things down and let the body do its thing.
Yeah, exactly. Some examples are aloe vera and reishi mushroom. Those are really good ones.
Okay, aloe vera, I can see that. Reishi mushroom, that's a new one for me.
That's a powerful one, yeah.
Okay, so what else can we do?
All right, so we also want to think about protection, right? Protecting against those unwanted microbes.
Right.
And we can do that by using natural antimicrobials.
Mm.
So things like oregano leaf extract and caprylic acid, they can help to keep those bad bacteria and fungi in check. And what's really cool is they do this without harming the good lactobacillus bacteria.
Okay.
So it's like a targeted approach,
So it's like weeding out the bad guys and letting the good guys flourish.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and then finally, we got to think about strengthening the body's defenses, right?
Yeah, boosting overall immune resilience is super important for long-term vaginal health.
Okay.
So nutrients like arabinogalactan and, again, reishi mushroom, they can actually help to strengthen your immune system, make it more robust so it can fight off those infections more effectively.
Wow. Okay. So this sounds like a really well-rounded approach. It's like attacking the problem from all sides. Now, I know that one of the resources that we got from you guys mentioned something called Balance Complex. And it was, it was presented as a potential solution. So in the context of what we've been talking about, managing atrophic vaginitis and all that, can you tell us a bit more about Balance Complex?
So Balance Complex is basically a vaginal probiotic supplement.
Okay.
And it's been scientifically formulated, to address all those underlying factors that contribute to atrophic vaginitis and just promote better overall vaginal well-being.
Mm-hmm.
It's designed to be a comprehensive solution. They combined a blend of probiotics with anti-inflammatory agents and those natural antimicrobials that we just talked about.
Okay.
So the idea is they're working together, synergistically to restore that balance, reduce inflammation, and just create a healthier environment in the vagina.
Okay, so it's like a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and I know that the information that you sent also mentioned that it's been on the market for quite a while.
Yeah, it's been around for over 10 years.
Over 10 years. Wow. And that a lot of women have used it, right? Like it's a pretty popular product.
Yeah. They say they've sold millions of capsules.
Wow, that's impressive.
And it also highlights the high concentration of live bacteria, which is important for a probiotic,
Yeah, for sure.
It has 100 billion CFUs per gram, which is a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot.
And it also contains cranberry and demonose.
Oh, right. Which are often recommended for urinary tract health.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like covering all the bases.
Yeah, trying to be a well-rounded product.
Okay, and they mentioned that it's got a lot of positive reviews, too.
Yeah, they say they have over 17,000 five-star reviews.
Wow, that's a lot of happy customers. And I think they said that we can find those on Amazon, right?
Yeah, you can read real reviews there.
Okay, cool. So people can check that out if they're interested.
Mm-hmm.
And they also talk about it being a maximum strength. It's a 17-in-1 strain blend.
Yeah, so it's got a lot going on.
And that it's specifically targeted for, like, odor and itching and discharge.
Right, all those common issues.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so they go into a lot of detail about the specific ingredients and their benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So let's break some of that down. Let's start with that vaginal probiotic blend, the one with that that huge CFU count.
Okay. Yeah.
So they highlight Lactobacillus acidophilus, and they say it's really important for maintaining that acidic pH.
Yeah, Lactobacillus acidophilus, you can think of it as kind of the workhorse. It's a real acid producer.
Okay.
It's one of the main bacteria that's responsible for creating that protective acidic environment down there.
Okay, got it. And then there's Lactobacillus rhamnosus, which they say supports the immune system and microbial balance.
Yeah, Lactobacillus rhamnosus has been studied a lot, and research suggests that it can help boost your immune response
Okay.
and also contribute to a more balanced microbial community.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a 2-for-1.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Okay. And then they mention Lactobacillus reiteri, which they say promotes tissue healing and reduces inflammation.
Lactobacillus reiteri is another beneficial strain,
Yeah.
and it's shown real promise in helping to repair tissues and just
Okay.
modulate the inflammatory process. So it can be really soothing.
Yeah, so it helps to, calm things down and promote healing.
Exactly.
Then we have Lactobacillus plantarum, which is highlighted for its antioxidant properties and its support of tissue repair as well.
Lactobacillus plantarum is known for being pretty versatile.
Okay.
It can contribute to tissue health in a lot of different ways, partly through its antioxidant activity.
Okay, so it's kind of like a multitasker.
Yeah, it can do a lot of things.
Okay. And then last but not least, we have Bacillus coagulans in this blend.
Mhm.
And they're saying that that one helps to enhance long-term microbial balance and helps prevent recurring infections.
Yeah, so Bacillus coagulans, this one's a spore-forming probiotic,
Yeah.
and that means it's a little bit more resilient.
Okay.
It can survive in harsher environments.
Okay.
So it can potentially contribute to a longer-lasting balance in the vaginal microbiome,
Gotcha.
and that could lead to fewer infections.
That makes sense.
So it's kind of like setting you up for success in the long run.
Okay, cool. So moving beyond the probiotics, the formula also has this cranberry and D-mannose blend.
Yeah.
And, we often hear about cranberry and D-mannose being good for, urinary tract health.
Right.
So it's interesting to see it included here.
Yeah, cranberry and D-mannose are often used to prevent UTIs.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically work by making it harder for certain bacteria to stick to the lining of the urinary tract.
Okay.
So they can't really set up shop and cause an infection.
Gotcha.
So, I think including them here suggests that they're trying to take this broader approach,
Yeah, like thinking about the whole system.
Exactly.
Okay. And then there's oregano leaf extract, which we talked about a little bit earlier as a natural antimicrobial.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that included.
Oregano leaf extract, it contains these compounds that have been shown to have, antimicrobial activity against a bunch of different bacteria and fungi.
Okay, cool.
So it's like a little natural warrior.
I like that. And then we have caprylic acid.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that that one's specifically good for targeting fungal infections like yeast overgrowth.
Yep. Caprylic acid is a fatty acid,
Okay.
and it occurs naturally. And it's known for its antifungal properties.
Okay.
So it's often used to manage yeast infections, and things like that.
Okay.
So good to have that in there.
Yeah, for sure. And then it also contains protease and cellulase. So what are those doing?
So those are enzymes, and you can think of them as kind of like demolition crews.
Okay.
Because, sometimes these bad microbes, they create what's called a biofilm.
A biofilm.
Yeah, it's like a protective shield.
Oh, interesting.
And proteases and cellulase, they can break down those biofilms.
So they're like breaking down the defenses.
Exactly. And that makes those harmful pathogens more vulnerable to your immune system.
Oh, that's clever.
And to the antimicrobials that are in the formula.
Okay, cool. And then we see aloe vera leaf in there as well.
Hmm.
And, aloe vera is known for its soothing and healing properties.
Yeah, it's great for, calming down irritation and inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
And just promoting healing in general.
Yeah, it's kind of like a go-to for, skin issues.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Then there's arabinogalactan,
Mm-hmm.
and they're saying that that helps to boost the immune system.
Yep. Arabinogalactan, that's a type of fiber,
Okay.
and it's actually a prebiotic fiber, which means it feeds the good bacteria in your gut.
Okay.
But it can also stimulate your immune system.
Oh, interesting.
So it's kind of a double whammy.
Okay, cool. And then there's aniseed, which is listed for its anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial benefits.
Yeah, aniseed contains compounds that have those properties.
Okay.
So it can help to reduce inflammation and fight off bad microbes.
Okay, great. It's a nice addition.
Yeah. And black walnut hulls are in there too.
Hmm.
And, I've heard of black walnut hulls being used for like detoxification and as an antibacterial and antifungal.
Yeah, they're traditionally used for that.
True.
So, they can potentially help to cleanse the body and fight off infections.
Okay, cool.
Always a good thing.
Always a good thing, yeah. And then there's wormwood, which they list for strengthening immunity and combating microbial overgrowth.
Yep. Wormwood's another one that's been used traditionally for those purposes.
Okay.
It's like a natural immune booster.
And it can help to keep those microbial populations in check.
Okay, great. And then last but not least, reishi mushroom, which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, reishi mushroom, it's a medicinal mushroom,
Okay.
and it's been used for centuries in, traditional medicine, and it's really powerful. It can help to modulate the immune system,
Okay.
reduce inflammation,
Mm-hmm.
and even promote healing.
So it's kind of like, an all-star when it comes to immune health.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the good guys.
Okay, so it really sounds like a comprehensive formula.
Yeah, it is.
It's designed to address like so many different aspects of vaginal health.
Hmm.
Okay, so, beyond thinking about supplements, what other practical tips can you offer, for managing atrophic vaginitis? Like what can women do in their everyday lives to make things better?
Yeah, there are some simple things you can do that can make a big difference.
Okay, great.
So first of all, stay hydrated. That's
Mhm.
always important for tissue health.
Yeah, water is essential.
It is. And when it comes to washing, use gentle, unscented cleansers.
Okay.
Avoid harsh soaps.
Mm,
And douching is a no-no.
okay, no douching.
Yeah, because those things can just irritate the delicate vaginal tissues,
Yeah.
and disrupt the natural balance.
Okay.
You also want to opt for breathable cotton underwear and avoid tight clothing. That just helps to, reduce irritation and promote airflow.
Okay, that makes sense.
And if you're comfortable with it, regular sexual activity can actually be helpful.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, because it increases blood flow to the vaginal tissues,
Okay.
and that can improve elasticity and natural lubrication.
Okay, so it's like good for your health in multiple ways.
It is. And then, diet's important too. Incorporate healthy fats,
Okay.
things that are rich in omega-3 fatty acids.
Okay, so like what, fatty fish, things like that?
Yeah, fatty fish, flax seeds,
Okay.
those are all good for tissue health and hormonal balance.
Okay, great. Those are all really, really helpful tips. Thank you. Now, I know that the information that you shared also talked about this resource for women called vaginalquiz.com. That's
Mhm.
vaginalquiz.com.
Mhm.
And it's designed to help women get a better understanding of their individual vaginal health. So what can you tell us about that?
So vaginalquiz.com, it's basically a quick online quiz.
Okay.
It's backed by science. It's designed to give you a personalized assessment of your vaginal health. And it only takes a couple of minutes.
Okay, that's great.
It's really aimed at women who are experiencing, symptoms like discomfort, dryness, odor, or just that feeling that something's off.
Right, like something's not quite right.
Yeah. So it could be helpful for women who are dealing with, recurrent infections, dryness, changes in their libido, or just anyone who wants to be more proactive and informed about their intimate wellness.
Right, yeah, like taking control of your own health.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So they describe it as a fast, free, and private way to get some insights into, what might be going on.
Okay.
And after you take the quiz, you get this, customized overview of your vaginal health.
Okay.
It'll highlight potential imbalances,
Mhm.
based on your answers.
Okay.
And then it gives you these expert-backed suggestions
Okay, cool.
that are tailored to your specific situation and lifestyle.
So it's not just like generic advice, it's really personalized.
Yeah, it's personalized to you. And the suggestions might include, dietary changes,
Okay.
lifestyle recommendations, or maybe even information about supplements that could help you restore balance.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of like a starting point,
Yeah, like a roadmap.
Yeah, a roadmap to better vaginal health.
I like that.
So you can start taking those steps without having to go to the doctor right away or, spend hours researching online.
Right, yeah. So it kind of empowers you to be proactive about your health.
Exactly.
Okay, well, this has been a really insightful deep dive, into atrophic vaginitis and vaginal health in general. It's clear that while it can be uncomfortable, it doesn't have to, rule your life.
Yeah.
We've talked about the importance of understanding the root causes, addressing that inflammation and supporting your body's natural defenses, and that all important.